throughout the Hudson Valley, New York City, and Long Island. For a free consultation with an experienced attorney, call or text us at 212-766-1100. Y sí, hablamos español.
Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of Cap and No Cap. I am your host, Kevin C. Meggett, and I've kind of been on hiatus for a minute, but it feels good to be back with the Cap and No Cap family that's all around the world. Just really wanted to talk about some of the things that's been going on before we bring on our guest today. I have a very exciting guest today. First thing I really want to talk about are these vaccines. You know, I put out a Facebook question asking, are you pro or are you anti-COVID vaccinations? And to my surprise, a lot of people, well, I guess it's not really to my surprise, but to a surprise, a lot of people are really against vaccinations. They do not want the vaccinations. Particularly foundational Black Americans, or just a lot of Black people in general, but particularly and especially foundational Black Americans are very, very anti-COVID vaccination. And I guess a lot has to do with the mistrust of the medical field as it pertains to us. And you know, Tuskegee experiment was just one of many, many experiments that foundational Black Americans endured and suffered at the hands of the medical field or the medical industry, and nothing was ever really rolled back to bring forth that trust. So, you know, I don't know how. I'm looking at the Biden administration saying we're going to basically superimpose these vaccinations on common people. And I just wonder, how is that going to work? I got a text earlier today saying, what are you prepared to do if the government actually enforces vaccinations? And the question is, I don't know. But knowing me, I'm a fighter. I'm not a fight. So I'm suing someone. We're going to have to hear that from the Supreme Court. And that's because that's where it seemed like that's where all of this is going, straight up to the Supreme Court. Because I don't believe you should be able to make anyone do anything. We don't know what's in those vaccinations. Chris Rock jokingly said, well, we don't know what's in Fruit Loops, you know, and I thought it was kind of funny and humorous, but I don't eat Fruit Loops, so I don't care what's in Fruit Loops. But before I put it in my body, I want to know what's in there. So I understand both sides of the spectrum. My argument has always been, I don't understand how me being vaccinated affects someone else's health. This is something that I'm talking about today, but I plan on making a future show out of it. It's an oxymoron. It's almost like saying, because it's raining and I have an umbrella, you're protected, or I'm wearing shades to protect my eyes from the sun, so that you're protected. That's kind of like my argument with it. But you know, moving right along, I digress. I want to talk about these social democrats real quick. The AOCs, the Mondier. You know, these people they're failing us miserably. I mean, miserably. And you know, the common thread is they come out of Bernie Sanders. And when it comes to with social democrats, they don't have a real progressive solution as it pertains to what is equity for foundational Black Americans. What they tend to want to say is, well, like Mondier, you know, he's quick to say, hey, I'm LGBTQ and I'm for affordable housing and food stamps. But when you push back and say, well, foundational Black Americans want more than just affordable housing, you know, how do we push to become homeowners? No, I'm just LGBTQ and affordable housing and food stamps because I've lived in poverty and I use food stamps. And if you've lived in poverty and you were impoverished and you needed government subsidies as a hand up, I'm all for it. But you can't make it a lifestyle. And I find that most Democrats make entitlement programs a lifestyle, and they string us along with like we're mules with a carrot, with a stick, on a rope, and say, look, entitlement programs, and here we are running to the polls, voting straight down the line, Democrat, 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 and that's an oxymoron. In order to fight this system of white supremacy racism, we're going to have to really fight these, we got to get to the root. And the root is we got to do better too. And so, you know, I digress. Next thing I want to talk about is HR 40. You know, I'm tired of everyone. Shout out to Charles Barron. If you hear me, I would love to have you on the show. He actually got a reparation bill in Albany passed. Congratulations. You know, it was way well to do. It's something that everyone should have been behind or in front of. And I'm gonna do my homework and find out who were the people that didn't vote for it. And those are the people we don't need to vote for in the elections, because we act like foundational Black Americans only built the South, and that's not true. We built the North as well. We built New York City, matter of fact. In fact, once upon a time, the largest plantation in the original 13 colonies wasn't in the South, but it was in Brooklyn, New York. A lot of people don't know that. Companies were founded off of slavery in New York City, like Domino Sugar and Tiffany's and Citibank. You know, and we deserve some type of reparations from it, because we're in a grave state, and only thing that I like to see us is in a protective class. See, I'm not for this whole African American lingo, because it's so broad and ambiguous that anyone could be an African American. For example, you claim the diaspora, we all come from Africa, allegedly. My ancestors is right here in Turtle Island, which later on became the United States of America. But if you claim the diaspora, you saying, well, I came from Africa, but I am an American. So if you're Caribbean, you're African, you're a dark melanated person from somewhere else, and you here, you can actually pick up that narrative and say, hey, I'm African American, and you can actually get any resources and benefits under being an African American. But when you say you're a foundational Black American, the next thing out of your mouth is, oh, well, I'm a foundational Black American too. Right after you both identify with being a foundational Black American, the next thing you're going to say is, well, what plantation did you come from? My plantation was in Charleston, South Carolina, or Edisto Island. So that's my exception. Foundational Black Americans, we have to stop running away from our exception and begin to run to it. And we should push to become foundational Black Americans and ask, at this point, we ain't asking for nothing. We're gonna have to take everything and take the fact that we are exceptional to this country. Our labor built this country, not just in the North or the South, but the entire, even West. So we built this whole entire country that other groups come here, they eat well, and they eating off of the stove of our ancestors. And I think just a little thank you would be in order. So, you know, that's my order of business. I like to see foundational Black Americans put in a protective class. We deserve it, just like Native Americans, because at the end of the day, and the bottom line, we are being gentrified out of this picture. And gentrification is a nice way of saying ethnic cleansing, as my brother Hakeem Green put on Facebook the other day. So, you know, gentrification is the new Jim Crow, and no one is looking at how that's going to impact us. And the government needs to look at us, look at that and say, what effect does gentrification have, or impact does it have on foundational Black Americans? So I'm moving along. Next thing I want to talk about is violence in our communities. There's a lot of it. Is a spike in violence because there's a spike in gang culture. And you know, at the end of the day, when COVID hit, I just feel as if that a lot of prisoners were let free because of COVID. And some of them, like, you know, I mean, like, we're gonna have to just talk truth to power, family. Some of them needed to be where they're at. They need to be in jail. So we let a whole lot of criminals out, and now you have a criminal element. So now you have, we know what Chicago looks like, but I'm afraid every major city in America is gonna mirror Chicago. And the white supremacists, they're very slick. What they do is they'll allow something like this, so when they pull that chain back and say, hey, we want, you know, you have a lot of Black people saying, hey, we need to go back to what worked before, mistreating these Black folks. So now I'm afraid you're going to see your rights being violated on a level that none of us really can ever comprehend, because they let it ride long enough to say, we want the old way back. And they're gonna not only implement the old way, they're gonna implement the old way with on steroids, with a vengeance. So, I digress. I don't condone gang culture. I don't condone violence. And our communities are being affected. And to me, it's a form, you know, we talk about terrorism. The United States government is the biggest terrorist, in my humblest opinion, because they allow certain things to prosper. Miseducation is a form of terrorism. Gentrification is a form of terrorism. Not being able to have adequate food is a form of terrorism. And so we have to really look at these things and be more active. Be more active in the things that we're doing. And by doing this, we have to not only vote, everyone's, oh, go out and vote, go out and vote. Listen, sometimes you can wield power by not voting, family, you know? And when we do vote, we're like, Democrat, Democrat, Democrat. We have to galvanize our vote and say, and create our own agenda and say, hey, this is what we want. And whoever comes to the table, be it a Democrat or a Republican, you know, that's who we should be voting for. We don't have foundational Black Americans in this country. We do not have any friends. We only have an interest. And anyone that wants to be a friend of our interest could be a friend. We don't have permanent friends. We have permanent interests. But I'm sitting here, I'm rambling. I'm gonna really get ready to take a quick commercial break soon. And I'm gonna bring on a host. I mean, I'm the host. I'm gonna bring on a guest who is actually an advocate. She ran for city council out in Brooklyn. She advocates, and we're gonna hear her story. But deeper than that, I've known this lady for a number of years. So I'm very proud of her and her story and where she came from and where she's going. But you know, one of the things we're gonna do is we're gonna chop up some real good game, and we're gonna give the family something that they really need. But we're gonna do that right after this quick commercial break. This is Cap and No Cap, Kevin C. Meggett.
What does a Regis divorce, a Regis bankruptcy, and a Regis personal injury claim have in common? Regis lawyers. Lawyers who care. Convenient, affordable, respectful, and experienced. We work 100% for the 99%. Over 20 years, we've helped thousands throughout the Hudson Valley, New York City, and Long Island. For a free consultation with an experienced attorney, call or text us at 212-766-1100. Ici, hablamos español.
Millennium TV, bridging communities worldwide. We broadcast diverse international content from Europe, Asia, Africa, and now right here in the USA. Watch us via Roku on your smart TV. Submit your own content to 1530entertainmentllc@gmail.com. Download the Millennium TV app from the App Store to stream our shows anywhere, anytime. Millennium TV.
We're back from Cap or No Cap. Kevin C. Meggett. Forgive me for the rant, family. I just haven't been at this behind this desk in a minute, and I had a lot on my mind. So, please take it as a labor of love, all of the ranting that I do. I always say that Millennium TV 24 has given me this great platform, and I'm very grateful for it because it avoids me having to sit on a couch and talk to someone professional. And so when I hear people say, "Hey, I love your show, Cap or No Cap," I'm like, "That's great. you might have needed a couch too." But anyway, thank you, Millennium TV 24. Got much love for the family. But I'm gonna bring on our guest. Her name is Harriet Hines. I've known Harriet for close to 2 decades. She ran for city council in the borough of Brooklyn, and she recently had a tragedy. That's where I guess we're going to start. She had a tragedy. And Harriet, welcome to Cap or No Cap.
Thank you for having me.
No, thank you for being on. So give me a little bit of background information about you.
Okay. Well, again, my name is Harriet Hines. I live in Flatbush, Brooklyn. I was just a candidate for City Council in District 40. District 40 covers Flatbush, Kensington, Midwood, Prospect, Lefferts Gardens, and the southern portion of Crown Heights. I'm a candidate. I'm a former candidate, a person with a disability, a physical disability, and I was the only candidate with a disability in my council race. I am an activist first, prior to running for a political seat, and there are a lot of things that plague us as a people and also that plague us as people in the borough, and those are the things that I advocate for.
That's outstanding. What are some of the issues that you have in Brooklyn that you were advocating for, which led you to want to run to begin with?
Well, I mean, my platform was on predatory development. There's a lot of developers that are coming into neighborhoods and they're ruining existing structures, and they're displacing residents and pricing out homeowners. So that's an issue definitely, in my district and in Brooklyn that, I am against. Criminal justice reform is another issue. Again, I am disabled, so definitely accessibility and inclusivity for all was my campaign slogan. Quality and accessible education. The children who have special needs were not getting quality education during, I would say, a COVID education period, where they were lacking the resources that was needed in order for them to thrive. Small business.
Right.
Yes.
That's very important.
Hello?
I said small businesses are very important. I'm sorry.
Yes, yes, definitely. Small businesses also too were lacking some of the resources that they needed in order to thrive during the COVID period. They have like higher taxes, which need to be reduced. Some of them needed to have access to more funding to keep them going,
Okay.
amongst other things. Also, public safety was one of the issues too with small businesses, and every issue on my platform that I advocated for was something that was passionate to me because it directly affected me.
Right. Okay. So how has your part of Brooklyn been gentrified as well, or is it being gentrified currently?
Oh, extremely, extremely gentrified. We're seeing with the gentrification, we're seeing like an onslaught of development that has been approved, by the mayor, borough president, council person. I mean, just in every crack and crevice, there's been a big building, and the reason why they've been creating these monster-like towers is because of mandatory inclusion housing, which in my area, we're not earmarked for mandatory inclusion housing. We were actually down zoned where we couldn't build anything over 6 stories.
Right.
But what they're saying under the umbrella of affordable, they're saying affordable housing in order to allow them to build taller and wider buildings, and that's what's happening in the area. And a lot of existing structures are being damaged, in the process, which that's why I said it affects me personally, because it happened to me personally where, a developer purchased the home next to mine, which is a brownstone, and they changed the occupancy, got an Alt-1 permit, built an extra story on top. And in the midst of them doing it, they damaged my family's home. So now we're, in this like long court battle, just trying to get the house repaired.
And your house is considered what would be considered like a landmark, right? It's supposed to be supposed to be protected. Am I correct?
It's 128 years old. Yes. So in terms of being landmark status, we did not make it a landmark, but it is qualified for landmark status.
Copy.
It's 128 years old. It's a Victorian home.
And oh wow, I'm sorry that that's happening, and I hope you could rectify that through the court system. But it kind of gives birth to what I'm telling you about this whole gentrification process. So let me ask you a question as a city council person. How do you feel about about affordable housing?
Well, I feel that affordable housing is a myth, that it's not really affordable. And the reason why it's not affordable is because the AMI is not accurate.
Right.
AMI is the area median income, and what they're doing is they're taking the AMI from more affluent areas outside of New York, Westchester, Passaic County. We keep going upstate, and they're taking those incomes of people who make more than people in New York City. And so what's happening is a lot of this housing is being built, but people can't afford to actually purchase it.
Right. That's you hit it right on the head. You 100% on point. The AMI is rigged, and the word affordable itself favors the rich. So we act like low income housing we act like poverty in America, well, in New York City and America on the whole has been eradicated, and it hasn't. What's happening is it's widening. And now you have the shelter business that's booming. It's $1 billion booming industry. And what's happening with gentrification, it's going to quadruple in the next 10 years. It's projected because of they're trying to make New York City an elite class for only wealthy people. And they even figured it out in terms of low income housing, or as we call it, the projects. What they're doing is they're privatizing a lot of these projects, and they're giving NYCHA is like privatizing certain projects, and they're giving 99-year lease to independent, privately owned developers, and they get to manage the day-to-day operations of the projects. Now, the drawback to that is, things that you normally nature would turn a blind eye to, they're going to start throwing people out. So if you're out there cooking out or grilling in front of your building, that's going to be where nature would just probably give you a slap on the wrist. They're going to look to put you out of the projects. You know, sometime you may have a loved one couch surfing and they're not reporting income. Those are terms to get put out of the projects. And so projects that have been privatized now, you know, what they're doing is they're using Big Brother, and they're using it on every floor, and they're monitoring your ins and outs. And this is just, you know, this is raggedy. But this is the reality of gentrification. It's being really targeted towards a certain group or certain class of people. My argument and pushback is, if you were city council and you were elected, what would you do to stop that process?
Well, again, it would be I would fight for a more accurate AMI, a community-based AMI, where you would take the income of the surrounding community, and that would determine the rent that's paid, so that the rent or the house or the apartment would be affordable. When I sat and I just listened to you explain what they're doing with the privatization of NYCHA, the first thing that popped into my head, I just immediately saw like the privatization. I can't even talk. The privatization of.
It's okay. I'm a little tongue-tied today too.
It's all. Like the privatization of prisons. It sounded like it seemed like it mirrored that same whole concept. It is doing it with housing now, as opposed to the prison system, but the housing is becoming like a prison.
Right, and it's not an accident. The system of white supremacy has think tanks that work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, does not take a vacation or a holiday, whereas we don't even have one. And this is why I think we need to really push to be put in a protective class, because if we're not, the goal is to really bury us. This country needs black people. They just don't want foundational black Americans. So, let's digress a little bit. Let's talk about some violence. You had a cousin or something that was, because I was just talking about that in my little rant. You had a cousin or something that was actually shot or something like that. Can you talk about that?
Yes, in May of this year, my cousin Shalimar Burkett was the young lady who got shot in the head while at a prayer vigil mourning a friend of hers who only died 11 hours earlier. She was at the vigil, and there was a drive-by shooting, and she was shot and she was killed. And she leaves behind two small children, two young boys, ages like 10 and 11 years old, and they're without a mom. And our family is in deep mourning, trying to make sense out of a senseless death.
First and foremost, I really offer you my condolences, and my heart really goes out to you. It's always, it always hits different when it hits home or it hits you. And so, I've known you well over 20 years, maybe even 25 years. We've always had a great relationship, and, my heart breaks for you and your family, and I hope you get past this pain and recover, as soon as humanly possible. What do you think is some of the solutions to curb the violence in these streets right now?
Well, I think some of the solutions is, I would say, restoring old-fashioned values, to be honest with you. One of the things that I noted is that, lack of education has a lot to do with the gun violence that's going on. People who are not aware of themselves are not aware of their value, and we're not even taught our value in the public school system. They don't teach, Black history in schools. They only teach about certain people, and that's it. We don't have any depth into, our awareness of where we come from, the things that we contributed in, with society. Also, a lot of people don't talk about it, and they may disagree. I think it's the good old-fashioned butt whipping. You know what I mean? Like, parents now are not even allowed to train their children or discipline their children. Even it says in the Bible to train a child the way they're supposed to go, and they won't depart from it. Now, with the laws. If a parent tries to discipline their child, they're calling ACSN and they're giving a parent a case, and the children know that the parent cannot discipline them, so they're like rampant and wild. And on top of it, it's the programming with the music that they're listening to. Everything is, shoot this, go to jail, take drugs, and this to me is a grand design. There's no mistake in what we're seeing at all. It was designed to be this way. When you again lack education, you lack parenting. Also, like I said, with the music, which is operant conditioning, they've been conditioning our minds for decades to get us to this point. There's no respect. There's no respect for elders in the community anymore. And I believe that a lot of that is what attributes to the gun violence that we're seeing now.
Wow. That's amazing. Listen, I firmly believe you. Everything that you just said is something that I've been echoing for a long time as well. But I think that not only do we have to get back to our values, but we have to take charge. And we're afraid. And we're gonna go take a real quick commercial break. And I'm gonna talk about how we're afraid to wield power in a minute. And then we're gonna talk about other things that are happening out in Brooklyn that you're fighting against. So let me take this real quick commercial break, and we'll be right back. This is your host, Kevin C. Meggett, a cap and no cap. I'm sitting here chopping up good game with Harriet Hines, former city council member. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
What does a Regis divorce, a Regis bankruptcy, and a Regis personal injury claim have in common? Regis lawyers. Lawyers who care. Convenient, affordable, respectful, and experienced. We work 100% for the 99%. Over 20 years, we've helped thousands throughout the Hudson Valley, New York City, and Long Island. For a free consultation with an experienced attorney, call or text us at 212-766-1100. Y sí, hablamos español.
Millennium TV, bridging communities worldwide. We broadcast diverse international content from Europe, Asia, Africa, and now right here in the USA. Watch us via Roku on your smart TV. Submit your own content to 1530entertainmentllc@gmail.com. Download the Millennium TV app from the App Store to stream our shows anywhere, anytime. Millennium TV.
And we're back. Your host, Kevin C. Meggett, cap or no cap. I'm here with Harriet Hines. We're sitting here, we're chopping up some good game. We were talking about, prior to going to break, I was talking about black folks are scared of power. We're scared to collectively aggregate it. We're scared to, we're frightened to death of aggregating our power, wielding our power. The majority of us will claim we're for freedom, justice, and equality, but equality is a very tricky word because it's something that our oppressor doesn't want us to have, but then it's something that we're scared to death of having, meaning three things come with equality, and that's responsibility, accountability, and sacrifice. And we're scared to sacrifice, we're scared to death of being held accountable and responsible. So I argue sometimes, are we really looking for freedom, or will we just settle for comfortable slavery? And we have this, before we could even attack the system of white supremacy racism, we need to actually do a lot of spring cleaning right now in our own house. And I don't depend on the Board of Education to give me any knowledge of self. Matter of fact, I would argue that the curriculum for the Board of Education is poison to our people. And do you feel the same way, Ms. Hines?
Well, I do. Again, as I outlined before, they only focus in on, Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, at this point, which are very, generic, Black civil rights activists. We as a people, again, don't have enough knowledge about our culture to really actually be able to articulate it to our offspring. We need to have more books to read so that parents can, tell children the things that they don't know. I do believe that definitely that the Board of Ed is like a poison, because there's a lot of discrimination within the Board of Ed system, even the way that they design tests, the way that they, offer schools to, children with these specialized testing. So, I don't think per se that the Board of Ed is the most reliable source,
Right.
But I think that in some cases it's the only source that some children do have.
Well, yes and no. But they're making it very difficult for you to homeschool. Homeschool is always an option, but they're even making it difficult for you to homeschool. But we have to figure this out, because if we don't, we're gonna cease to exist as a people. And when I say I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm not cutting you over. It's difficult to homeschool when there's not enough broadband available for people in, low income communities. Like, especially like, give an example, in the beginning of the pandemic, I had my children being homeschooled.
Right.
And then I came against, not having internet access, which forced me to eventually have to make my children return back to school. And that is something that people in low income communities, or say Black and brown people, that's something that we don't have adequate access to. So it does make homeschooling very difficult.
Right. I hear your argument, but it seemed like our problem is deeply rooted in economics. And we always cry, we don't have this, we don't have that. But when you look at what we spend as a people, we could everything that we want, we can have, and some. We don't make excuses to go to the Asians to get hair care products. We don't make excuses to go to the corner store to get a sandwich. We don't make excuses to buy the new Jordans. We don't make excuses to do the things that we want to do. So I argue sometimes the reason why we're falling behind by the waistline, or why we're so fragmented as a people, has a lot to do with the mentality. And so we have to fix the mentality. And I think that fixing the mentality, that's going to happen only in one place, in the street. You got to remember, and you made a great point with the violence, with the music, when you look at music of yesteryear, you look at music in the 60s when folks were in the streets for whatever kind of rights they were trying to obtain. I hate using the word civil rights, because the person that drafted it and the person that signed it, they themselves weren't civilized. So they gave us something that they themselves are not. These are not civilized people. They're savages. But we were in the street protesting and advocating for ourselves. We stopped doing that. You know what I mean?
Definitely. Just the other day I was looking at the show Good Times, and I think a lot of people don't really realize that show really sheds insight onto what's going on, within the Black culture. Like, again, when I went back and I had said about, let's take it back to the good old-fashioned values. Mm-hmm. There was an episode I just saw the day before yesterday where James Evans, I think he was, disciplining one of Michael's friends for not wanting to study, we were raised with a village-like mentality. That mentality is gone. Like, I remember when I was younger, my neighbor could correct me, any elder could correct me.
Right, I remember that too.
That's not the case, you know what I mean? So it's like, again, people don't realize that it's a difference between corporal punishment and discipline. You know what I mean? Again, our children lack discipline.
Right.
And that is part of it. Without the discipline, there's no respect for elders and values.
Right. Right.
And again, just going into the next thing, it's so bad that even like our politicians, they don't even respect and value their own culture.
Well,
and
in New York City politicians, and I've always argued this, and I don't know if you've seen the show in the past, I've always would bring Andy King on as my special co-host, because there are not many foundational Black American politicians in City Hall. There are not many foundational Black American city council people. If any, I want to say there's none. When they did him so dirty after they expelled him for no reason, I think everyone in there is Caribbean or African. I mean, they're not, and it's not, I'm not taking a shot at Caribbeans or Africans. You know what I mean? They're my brothers and sisters too. My argument is really that we look at foundational Black Americans, look at racism and treat racism different than any other group of people. And being that we are the native people that have always been in the belly of this beast, they should be taking a lead from us. But my whole thing is, we can't fix this. When we look at the system, you saying that the system's broke. The system is not broke. The system is working just fine. It just wasn't designed for us. It absolutely was not designed for us, and we're trying to fit a circle into a square.
Well, I mean, when you go back and you mention, we mention the politicians again, a lot of the politicians don't even value their own history and culture. One of the other issues that I'm advocating for in Brooklyn is for the Brooklyn Borough President, who's now the mayoral elect.
You're talking about Eric Adams, right?
Eric Adams, yes. Mm-hmm. And Councilman Matthew Eugene,
okay,
who are both of African descent. They've signed off to build on an African burial ground on the corner of Church Avenue and Bedford Avenue in Brooklyn.
Wow.
I'm completely baffled by this. Again, for people who are both of African descent, like, I don't care if you're Haitian, Trinidadian, Jamaican, we're all from the same diaspora, and they signed off to build on top of their ancestors. So this is what we go out there each Wednesday at 5:30, and we fight in opposition against. Now, they made this decision before consulting the community that they wanted to build on top of it. So therefore, community had very limited input, and that's the reason why we're still fighting right now. And I'm here telling you about it, and probably your viewers are even unaware that this is going on.
I really wasn't aware of that at all.
No, this is like a kept secret. This is a secret, because I'm quite sure that if more people of African descent knew about this, I'm quite sure that I don't think that they would quite agree with this. We have African graves popping up all throughout the nation right now. They're like discovering them all over the place. So you would figure that you would put your political aspirations, your financial aspirations aside to uphold your history and culture. Pretty much right now, what we do see is that they're favoring only a certain group of people. Again, the Haitian people, they have this situation going on right now, and I don't speak ill upon it, because again, they're Haitian, but they're also my people because they're also from the same diaspora. But it seems like there is no respect for African American plight, and more respect for plights for people throughout the world.
It's funny you say that. That's been always my argument. I think one of the biggest things we need to argue with, and we're gonna have to push back on, is the fact that take the word African American out of your vocabulary and start making yourself foundational Black American, Native Black American, or Aborigine or Indigenous, because that's what we are. But each group of people have their own derogatory term as it pertains to the foundational Black American. So what we got to do is just basically close ranks, because they're here eating off of our narrative.
And you're right. And you know what? Replacing African American with foundational American, like you said, those ancestors that are buried in that gravesite are the foundation of this country.
Absolutely.
But you have up the block, only a block away, you have the Dutch Reformed Church that sits on the corner of Church and Flatbush, and there's a cemetery attached to that church. Within that cemetery lies the remains of the slave masters that colonized New York. You have the Cortelyous there, you have the Livingstons there, you have the Lefferts there, the list goes on. They're sitting in a cemetery that is well kept, maintained. It's a tourist site only a block away. When the slaves wasn't allowed to be buried in that cemetery, they took and threw their bones, over a block away and more. And like I said, most of it's already been developed on throughout the decades. You have the post office there, you have Church Avenue, you have Bedford Avenue, you have Erasmus High School, you have the gas station. All the way back to almost Nostrand Avenue.
Hold that thought. I got to take a real quick commercial break, but I mean, what you're telling me right now is mind-boggling. And we're going to take a real quick commercial break, and we're going to jump right back into this, okay? This is your host, Kevin C. Meggett, Cap and No Cap, chopping it up with my girl, Harriet Hines. Be right back.
What does a Regis divorce, a Regis bankruptcy, What does a Regis divorce, a Regis bankruptcy, and a Regis personal injury claim have in common? Regis lawyers. Lawyers who care. Convenient, affordable, respectful, and experienced. We work 100% for the 99%. Over 20 years, we've helped thousands throughout the Hudson Valley, New York City, and Long Island. For a free consultation with an experienced attorney, call or text us at 212-766-1100. Y sí, hablamos español.
Millennium TV, bridging. Millennium TV, bridging communities worldwide. We broadcast diverse international content from Europe, Asia, Africa, and now right here in the USA. Watch us via Roku on your smart TV. Submit your own content to 1530entertainmentllc@gmail.com. Download the Millennium TV app from the App Store to stream our shows anywhere, anytime. Millennium TV.
I'm sorry, we're back. Cap or no cap. I was sitting here chopping it up with our good sister Harriet Hines. She was telling me basically about how one group of people are being favored over another, where you have a historic cemetery on one side of the street and which is going to now be affordable housing on the other, which should have been just as much as a historic cemetery. Shame on Eric Adams. I'm not sure he is a foundational Black American. I don't know. I'm going to actually do my homework and research. But this doesn't surprise me because Mayor Bloomberg at that time found there were wanted to do developing and building, and they found tunnels leading back to the Underground Railroad, and they found these tunnels in downtown Brooklyn, and when they realized what they were, he said it was of no significance, and they destroyed those tunnels and they actually build. But this is what not having power looks like, Harriet. When you don't have power, you can't hold no one responsible. See, our problem as foundational Black Americans, we're scared to galvanize our power. We're scared to wield it. We are waiting for white folks to punish white folks. And you might as well wait for Christmas gifts on Halloween, because it's not going to happen. You know what I mean? So I would love to stand with you. When do you stand out there, and how can people get involved?
Okay, the name of my group is called African Graves Matter. You can also find this on AfricanGravesMatter.com. Also on Instagram at African Graves Matter, on Twitter at African__ Graves. And we each Wednesday, every Wednesday at 5:30, we stand in front of the African Burial Ground on Church Avenue and Bedford Avenue, and we use our voices in opposition. There are times when the numbers are, greater, that we do actually take the street, and we walk and we march up the street from the burial ground up to the Slave Master Cemetery, which is only a block away. Wow. So we encourage each and every one who is interested in this and interested in saving this burial ground to please come out every Wednesday at 5:30 to take action.
And where is this at?
In Brooklyn, on Church Avenue, the corner of Church Avenue and Bedford Avenue.
Okay. Church and Bedford. Okay. So we have viewers all over the world, and we do have viewers here in the United States. So I urge you to get involved. Support this sister. I am, but going back to us having power and wielding power, and not being afraid of power. One of the things that I'm looking to do, because let's face it, we're bleeding by the seams. I mean, I can't advocate for other groups. I can only advocate for mine. And it's not a slide. It's not a disrespect. It's not a dig. I could support other people's group with their cause, but I very seldom do so because we don't get any support with ours. So that's how that works. It's called quid pro quo. You don't just practice it in elections, but you should practice it in your day-to-day life. One of the things that I would like to do is I would like to see foundational Black Americans not pay city taxes. I believe there's something like 2.3 million foundational Black Americans here in the United States. I'm sorry, in New York City. 2.3 million foundational Black Americans right here in New York City alone. So if we could save that tax money, all but $5. We should be able to keep all of our money but $5. And we could, hypothetically, we'll say 1 million people are working, right? Or working people. We should have a slush fund where we could put that $5, or would be $5 million every week into a slush fund. And after 5 to 7 years, we could build that up and actually draw real loan money, so we could actually have loans that we could compete. The problem why we're losing, Harriet, is we're not competing. Every other group in this country are competitive. They race, from what I was taught from Dr. Claude Anderson, isn't about the hue in your skin. It has to do with being in a competition with like-minded people that belong to the same group or culture that you belong. So when you see Asians, they have the hair care industry locked down, and the Chinese restaurants locked down, right? They're competing. That's their resource. You see the Indians. They have the Dunkin' Donuts and the cheap motels locked down. That's an industry for them. You know what I mean? You look at the Arabs. They have they used to be called bodegas. There's no more bodegas. They're mini marts. They got that locked down. But we're consuming everything. We're the supermarkets are the Dominicans now. You know what I mean? The fine fairs and the sea towns and the superfoods. You know, everyone's competing. We're not competing. We're off on the sideline consuming everything. And that's why, and you're taking the economic value, our blood, out the community, because once upon a time, you know, we act like Tulsa, Oklahoma was the only Wall Street. We had plenty of Wall Streets. We had Wall Streets in Maryland. You had Black Wall Streets in North Carolina with the insurance policies. You had Black Wall Streets in Delaware. You had Black Wall Streets all over. Tulsa is the only one that's recognized because it was bombed. And the reason why it was bombed was because this was a time this was pre Great Depression. And this is what history won't tell you. The reason that they were bombed was because on the other side of the tracks were white folk. And you had all of these well-to-do black folk. We weren't sitting around begging for civil rights. We weren't people asking us to go vote. We created a system within a system to take care of ourselves. And what you had across the tracks were jealous white folk that were upset because we lent the money. And rather than pay us back with the interest, they bombed us. They came up with this fruitless argument about some white lady tripping over a black man, and and that was the first act of. We look at the Middle East as, oh, they're terrorists. The first act of terrorism was right here in the United States. America is the biggest terrorist organization in the world, and I mean, I'm just speaking truth to power, but it comes down to bad government, and we're putting in these social democrats that don't have a clue. Like I was talking to her earlier with Mondaire. Mondaire's whole thing is, I'm LGBTQ, affordable housing, and food stamps. Okay, well, you know, you mean to tell me your whole entire district is LGBTQ? Or your whole entire district want food or on food stamps? You're talking about something personal. He has no agenda. He has no agenda to push the needle forward, but he's not alone. I don't want to seem like I'm beating up on him, but he's easy to beat up on. He's not alone. It's the representation that we're putting in, and that comes directly out of a lack of being educated on how government even works. But I don't even want to dispense my energy on how government works. We could take that time and that breath to create our own government and see how we can make it work for ourselves.
You know, that's what it is. There's a lot of marginalized communities that, you know, suffer under representation. And these government officials, especially of color, I wouldn't say all of them, I'm not putting them all in a bucket, but majority of them are hired gatekeepers to keep the rest of their constituents, especially black constituents, down. You know, one thing that I discovered again while running for a political position is that most people, like you said, they're uninformed and they're considered to be almost like swine, you know, because they don't know any better in order to do any better and in order to elect any better. They sit down and they take the same narrative over and over and they put the same people back into office. They were, you know, I call them regimes. Like when one regime term limit out, they go and they hire their proteges and put them right back in office. But again, that comes from lack of education and being informed about what's really going on. And so when you are not informed, you become a mass of swines that accept anything and think that, you know, what we're going through right now is the norm and we can't get any better, you know, and that's what they feed on.
Yo, well, listen, we running out of time. I got to wrap this up. I'm gonna bring you back, I promise. I want to give a big shout out to Millennium TV for giving me this platform. We are available on Roku, Apple. We have all kind of streaming services you could get us on. Download the app. We on Fire TV. You know, we're Apple, Roku, iPhones, smart Androids, all your smartphones, all your smart devices. You could download the app and catch us, and make sure you definitely download us on all smart TVs and Androids. We're gonna bring you back because this was a very engaged conversation. I want to thank you. I want to thank Millennium TV for giving us this platform, and I'm gonna be out there and stand with you. So be prepared.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.